Okay. Issue 4, Biden's nominees.
To the United States Senate, I hope these outstanding nominees will receive a prompt hearing and that we will be able to work across the aisle in good faith and move forward as one country.
Unveiling his economic team this week, President-elect Joe Biden called on the Senate to confirm his nominees. That ask is easier said than done. Republicans are presumed likely to retain Senate control once 2 Georgia Senate runoffs are completed on January 5th. And while Biden's Treasury Secretary nominee, former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, has met with some Republican open minds, Biden's pick for the Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden, was described by GOP Senator John Cornyn as quote-unquote radioactive. Republicans have also offered skepticism for Biden's Secretary of State nominee, Antony Blinken.
You know, John, yet to be seen with a lot of nominees. And of course, those Georgia Senate races become, even more relevant in terms of this discussion. And perhaps we can broach into that a bit. But how do you see the probability of Joe Biden getting these perhaps more progressive nominees through a Republican-controlled Senate?
I hope he gets them through. I think that presidents, if they're elected, should get to the people they want. I may not agree with them. I certainly don't agree with Janet Yellen on all manner of economic issues, but that's the point. He was elected. We want him and his administration to show their cards. Usually what happens is administrations, Republicans or Democrats, overreach in the first 2 years. So with Obama, we saw it with Trump, we saw it with Clinton, we saw it with Reagan. Electorate corrects that back usually through the House of Representatives. So let's do it again. Let's let Biden have whom he wants. And so at which point he can't blame the other side if things don't work out the way he wants them to work out.
Clarence.
Yeah, I agree that Biden should be able to have who he wants. He's made some good choices here. Antony Blinken, some conservatives may not like him, but he's been right at Biden's side for years and is very experienced with these issues. The State Department's been hollowed out by the Trump regime and it needs to be rebuilt. He's a great guy to lead that. I'm amused by the Neera Tanden controversy. I mean, why is she controversial? Because of mean tweets. I feel like I'm back in high school again. And of all the administrations to be complaining about meanness over Twitter, this one, where the president has made his whole political image based on that area of cyberspace. So no, I think some good choices are being made here by President-elect Biden. Let him have what he wants.
And Pat, Neera Tanden came on this show about a year or two ago, and I actually thought in the green room was very pleasant and engaging and perhaps not at all toxic as presented on Twitter. But anyway, your thoughts on Biden's nominees.
Let me talk about Blinken, though. Clearly, as Clarence said, he's been with Biden all through these years. But the point is, he's an establishment Democrat, the same old crowd that took us into the wars in Iraq and Libya and deeper into Afghanistan and into Yemen and into Syria. And now even Joe's talking about the forever wars and he's going to take us out. That's my problem with him. We're going back to the same old. And this is exactly what the American people, when they voted for Trump, they rose up against this establishment and threw it out and said, we want a new foreign policy. And I think that Blinken, he should get through because he's qualified and experienced. And I think there's a basic sense that you ought to vote for the guy's ticket, whatever he puts up there. But I think this is going to be, in my view, it's the same old gang coming back again.
Eleanor.
I think Blinken gets through. He was Deputy Secretary of State in the previous administration, under Hillary, when she was Secretary of State. And so he's been Senate confirmed at least once and maybe twice. Whether this is the same old, that was one of the labels that was tossed out when Biden unveiled that first group in the national security world, that it was a restoration. They really rebelled from that characterization, and they're saying this is 2020, it's not 2016. It may be a restoration, but it's a restored class of people who have learned from their mistakes. And I think the fact that they bring this wealth of experience, that they get along, we're not going to get, the Secretary of State vying with the National Security Advisor. I think it's a Class A group. Now about Neera Tanden, I think it's kind of curious that she's the hill that Republicans and Democrats are going to die on, that she's going to be the center of the fight to head the Office of Management and Budget. She's not even that popular on the Democratic side because she was kind of anti-Bernie Sanders. So she was so pro-Hillary and that whole controversy. And so the Sanders people, the progressives, aren't wild about her. So, I think there's got to be a fight about someone. And so I think she's it. I mean, it's like a game of tag or not merry-go-round, around the circle. Anyway, she's the one. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So she's kind of gotten tagged, but this isn't like the CIA director who's being pushed back on. So I think that these are minimal fights. This has been the smoothest transition that I've ever seen.
Okay, let's shift to a slightly different area of interest here. John, what do you think is going to happen with these two Georgia Senate runoff elections on January 5th? We do have the president down in Georgia this weekend saying that he wants Republicans, conservatives to turn out. And yet there are those conservatives who believe the Republican Party has betrayed President Trump and who are telling Georgia conservatives to stay home. Do you think that might make the difference?
Yeah. Initially I thought this was going to be a cakewalk for the Republicans. Ossoff's a 2 or 3 time loser in Georgia, and then Loeffler was going to be running against one person as opposed to several, and so it seemed like an obvious win. But Republicans seem intent on snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Sidney Powell's telling them not to vote, that their votes won't count, that somehow there's some conspiracy going on there. And more broadly, Republicans can't move on. I will defend the right of people like Trump to respect the will of his voters. But at some point, I don't want to look like the other side that always contests election results. And so it's time for Republicans to move on. And in doing so, vote Republican, because that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is we want to limit government. Divided government should be the dream of every Republican. Here's your chance to get it, and you're worried about the election of a president. That's not what Republicans are supposed to be like.
Okay, Clarence.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but the mixed signals going out show you what happens when you undermine credibility of the electoral process. You've got people who are so fired up and pro-Trump and against the Democrats and against the Democratic victory there, that they're literally asking people not to vote. Just show them, just hold your breath until you turn blue. That'll show them. I mean, this is really so self-destructive. And it's really, it's the kind of trouble in the GOP that I was talking about earlier, Pat, and believe me, I've watched Democrats go through their own factional fights over the years, too. I know what a factional fight looks like, but this has got some lasting power to it, I think. And I mean, we will see. I didn't use this for a prediction, but I think that this is just the beginning of what we see, the pressure occurring inside the Republican Party as people sense that they're on the shrinking end of the demographic stick right now, that their constituency is just shrinking, and they aren't reaching out even to pragmatic Republicans who've really got some decent ideas out there.
Although,
that was where Obama got Obamacare from, remember?
Pat, perhaps to surprise of some, the Republican Party would seem, based on President Trump's performance, to have an opportunity with Hispanic voters, perhaps more than anticipated. So maybe the demographics will surprise us. But how do you see Georgia playing out?
Well, I see it as, I agree with John. I thought originally this is pretty much a slam dunk. We got two good candidates emerging, both of whom are favored. You're going to have money and energy and fire. And now you've got this horrible division in the Republican Party down there. I appreciate that Clarence wants to bring the party together, as I do. But this is a critical election, I'm telling you, because those two votes, at least one of them's got to win to give the Republicans control of the Senate. And if they don't get control, that enormous agenda of the Democratic left is going to be rolled over from the House through a Democratic Senate if Republicans aren't controlling it and down to the White House. So I think it couldn't be a larger issue for Republicans. And I would hope that the President of the United States, when he goes down there and argues and says, look, just to show that we won this Georgia election, let's win this new one here by a far larger margin, and makes that kind of case rather than gets into the quarrel.
Eleanor, if you were a Republican strategist, would you be trying to woo Joe Manchin as the insulate or the insurance against Republican loss?
You know, I want to get in on the Georgia races. So I want to point out that it's kind of win one for the gypper, as the president who wants to gyp the American people. And that's the modern version of win one for the gypper, in case those didn't pick up on it. But the president has made it so that these Georgia election officials have to have security round the clock. I mean, again, he has incited violence in that state. And there has been time also for the records of these two Republican candidates, and both David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. They have cashed in on their time in the Senate with insider trading. The New York Times, I think it is, documented all over 2,000 trades that Perdue has made, where he's profited from information he had in committees he served on. So there's some really good information coming out. And what do I think about Joe Manchin? I think we need Joe Manchin, and we need Susan Collins, and we need all the other bipartisan people who have come out in service of this $908 billion COVID relief bill. And so I applaud anybody who's willing to work on the problems that affect the country, including and especially Joe Manchin. He's a lifeline at this point for the country.
Okay. One of the things I think we will certainly see is President Trump continuing to be a very forcible presence in the Republican Party, for good or ill. The president is not going away, and one indication of that is the desperation on the part of the RNC to see the president turning up in Georgia for the two Republican Senate candidates.